This video is brought to you by Sailrite. Visit Sailrite.com for all your project supplies, tools, and instructions.
Hi, I'm Matt Grant from Sailrite, and today I'm going to show you how to make your very own roller shades.
Purchase your roller shade clutch kit at Sailrite. Then pick a great roller shade fabric by navigating to the fabric category and clicking roller shade fabric. Here's Matt Grant, Vice President of Sailrite, to show you how it's done.
And before we get started, I want to let you know that if you go to Sailrite's website and you look under any of our roller shade product kits, you can look under the specifications tab and you can find the written instructions that we put together for doing this project. It's a good idea to print those out and have them available as you work through this project in combination with this video.
A detailed materials list can also be found at the end of this video. Here are the common tools that we suggest to make your own roller shade. The first step required, measuring your window.
The very first thing you want to do when you get ready to build a roller shade is you want to take some measurements. But even before you take those measurements, it's a good idea to have in mind how you want to do your roller shades or how you want to configure them. And there are a couple things to think about. One is, do you want it to be a regular wind or do you want it to be a reverse wind? This happens to be a regular wind, and if this material had two sides to it, this would be the visible side from inside your home, and the back side of the fabric would show here on the roller. So keep in mind, if it doesn't matter if the back side shows, a reverse wind is very nice, or a regular wind, I'm sorry, is very nice because it gets the material as close to the window as possible, which reduces light coming through the sides of the shade. If you go with the reverse wind, the material would be rolling off the top of the roll as my hand is running now, and you can see that would pull the material further away from the window so you'd get more light coming through, but you would only see one finished surface of the material, including the roller and the panel as it's rolled down. So reverse and regular wind is what we're going to be doing today, which is what you see here. The other thing to notice is that we have done an inside mount on this particular roller shade, which means that our brackets are nested inside the jambs of the window, and that keeps our brackets so that they're less visible. An outside mount would be where you take these brackets and you mount them either on your woodwork or even on your drywall in this particular case to get even more fabric coverage of the window framing itself. So you can do either inside or outside mounts. The other thing that you might want to decide at this point as we look over here to the left is the clutch mechanism. Do I want that on the left or do I want it on the right end of the window? It really doesn't matter. You just need to know what your preference is. And finally, I want to discuss the ball chain. You'll notice that our kits come with a continuous ball chain that has a connector. This connector, when you rotate it, will restrict its passage around the clutch, and as a result the chain has to be roughly this long, about 2/3 the height of the window before it hits the restraining device. If you have children or pets at home that you are worried about grabbing and operating your shades or getting tangled in them, you can purchase optional continuous ball chains from us that are much shorter, and since they're continuous they won't have this stop, which means you could have a very short chain that just operates really high up on your window. So if you want that as an optional safety mechanism for the operation of your shades, feel free to purchase those optional accessories. As I mentioned earlier, we're doing an inside mount. For an inside mount, I want to measure inside the jamb, and we are 33 3/4 inch. Make sure you do this for every window that you have for each individual shade. And then I want to measure the height of the shade to where I would like the bottom of the shade to stop. And we're at 45 1/4 inch.
Believe it or not, the most difficult thing of making a roller shade is cutting the fabric. Matt goes over that in detail.
I need to have a nice square corner or top to my roller shade fabric. And you'll see we picked out a lovely Fifertex designer fabric for our particular shade. There are a variety of selections that you can make, including the more standard Fifertex shear weave material. And some of that material is so wide that you could even get multiple shade widths from a single width of fabric. So when you're selecting your fabric, which could be anything from Fibertex to Fibertex Plus to Fibertex Designer or sheer weave or even some blackout materials, make sure that you take the width consideration into your calculations for exactly how much fabric you need. You can gain some efficiencies by cutting multiple panels from wider widths when you have narrower windows. So I've got my cutting mat down, I've got my square, and I've lined up my material edge. This particular fabric, the selvage edge, is pretty straight with the stripe, so I'm going to keep that edge, and I'm going to line my square up with the edge of that fabric, and looks to me like if I cut right along the outside of the square here, I will be able to start to true this up. And what I like to do is I like to just do this in sections. If you have a longer metal ruler, you can really cheat and make this easy, but I want to show you sort of the way that I would do it with just sort of standard tools. Your kit comes with a bottom rail that has a, if you can see it here, a passageway that's roughly 3/4 of an inch in width, and you can run a strip of fabric into that in order to make it more decorative looking. So we need to cut that 3/4 inch strip of fabric next.
We are using a rotary cutter and a cutting mat, but if you do not have that, you can use scissors. The clear acrylic ruler is also very helpful.
Okay, next we're going to cut the width of our shade based upon the width that we measured of the window. And if we had a pattern that would work for our selvage edge, we could keep that selvage edge. But I don't believe that's going to work with this particular stripe. So before we can determine that, first thing we need to do is we need to take our width measurement, which was 33 3/4 in our particular example, and we want to reduce it by 1 3/8 inch. So after we reduce the 1 3/8 from it, we end up with 32 3/8 inch for our width. So if we start at the selvage to see where we are, now if this were a solid material, you just measure over from the selvage, but we're going to check our pattern. So 32 3/8 inch is right there. And that's not going to center our stripe. You can see we've got a gray stripe here, and we're into a brown over here. So what we need to do is we need to take that 32 3/8 inch, and we need to start moving it over and see where we end up with a good pattern. And it looks like right there. So right there, I'm getting a brown stripe here very close to the edge with a gray stripe on the outside of it. And here you can see I'm getting a brown stripe with a gray stripe on the outside of it. So I'm going to have to make 2 lengthwise cuts in order to get my edges, and I'll make those cuts long enough to handle my length.
Here, Matt is marking with a pin to indicate the cut width along both sides of the fabric, since this is a striped pattern.
To calculate the length of our fabric, we need to add 12 inches to our 45 1/4 for our shade. So that's going to be 57 1/4 inch. Since we have a long table here, which is very nice, we're going to rotate our fabric so that we can take advantage of the length of our table. And as we said just a little bit ago, we need 57 1/4 inch. So I'm going to come from the top, and I'm going to make a mark at the 57 1/4 inch, and we know roughly where it needs to be because we have stripes to follow. So I'm just going to make a line that runs this way at the 57 1/4, and I'm going to do that exact same thing at our next mark, which is way up here. Making sure you're starting with one square edge is extremely important when you're doing roller shades, especially if your windows are true. If your windows are cattywampus, it won't matter that much because you're going to get a little bit of an angle cut on the edges as you go anyway. but I always like to make sure my shades are perfectly square. So I'm lining up the top here on my cutting mat to one of the lines, and then I'm lining it up on the other side, and I'm just checking to make sure that this selvage edge is indeed perfect, and we have a nice 90-degree corner, and you can see here that you can't get much better than that. We're right on the lines. So that means that this edge is a good edge to follow. And what I'm going to do then is I'm going to use our clear acrylic ruler because I'm fairly close to the edge, and I can determine that if I line up on this line where the 2 and the 4 are, that's going to get me right where I want to start cutting. So it's going to make it really easy for me without having to draw a bunch of lines on the fabric to do this. If you have to draw lines on the fabric, it's no big deal, but I always try and find quick ways to get things done. Slice through. Now I can just move the board and move. So I'm going to move my board down, and I'm going to move my acrylic ruler down as I go. Now we've got it cut all the way to our mark there, and I can just scissor cut the rest of that off. To make sure we get a square cut on this side, since our clear patterning ruler isn't wide enough to come from that edge and measure and cut over, it's a good idea to take some diagonal measurements. So I'm actually going to measure from the cut edge where our line intersects over here, all the way up to the top. So I'm going to put my measuring device right on the ink mark at the edge of the cut. And then up top here, I want it right on the inside of my mark, which I've got it right there. I have 65 3/4 inch. So now I want to take that 65 3/4 inch, and I want to do the exact same thing over here. So I'm going to go from this corner, 65 3/4 right there, and I'm going to line it up down there at the bottom. Now notice I've got the ruler edge on the outside, so I have to be consistent between both sides. So there's my 65 3/4, and then I can come over here, and where that intersects, right there, should be my square point. So now what I want to do is I want to connect from this point to that point, and I should have perfectly parallel edges. Okay, we're going to pen mark this one and scissor cut it so you can see it can be done that way too. The other thing you might want to do, even after you've done your diagonals, is take some measurements across at the top. So we're 32 and just under a half. 32 and just under half, that looks perfect. Never hurts to measure twice, 3 times before you cut or mark anything. Otherwise, you may be purchasing some more fabric. And once I have this lined up, just gonna use a pin in this case. Depending upon the color and the material, a pencil might work, or a grease marker or what have you. You can see this material is very easy to cut, and part of the reason that we make very specific recommendations for fabric for roller shades is that you cannot have hems or seams in the material that run vertically. You could have them horizontally if you like, because they will roll up evenly on the roll. But if you have any thickness vertically that is odd throughout the width of the material, you'll get an uneven roll as you roll the roller shade up. So we are very, very careful to pick only fabrics in our selection suggestions that meet the requirements of roller shades. Finally, we'll line up our marks across the bottom and make sure it's square, and we'll cut the bottom off. Your roller tube and your bottom rail should be cut to match the same width as your cut fabric. So we will simply line it up on one edge, and then we'll make a mark on the roller tube at our cut point. And we will do the exact same thing with our bottom rail. Okay. Protect your table if it's a delicate surface, and simply cut on your lines. Once the bottom rail is cut, choose a pleasing color of Rust-Oleum paint, paint the bottom rail, and paint the end caps so that they best match your fabric.
Now comes the easy part, assembling the shade components.
This is the point where we attach the roller to the fabric, and it's also the time where you need to decide whether you're doing a regular or a reverse wind. If you are doing a regular wind, you will put the fabric on so that the finished side of the fabric is facing you here, and the unfinished side of the fabric will be exposed on the outside of the roll. If the material is the same on both sides, it doesn't matter. Notice that there are match-up lines on your roller. Find one that is closest to your tape and that direction of the tape as you stand in front of the roller. Then what you want to do is you want to rotate the roller until that line, or you can pull up this fabric, until that line is matched up with your fabric. I'm going to roll it up one more time. Just want to be nice and careful to get this on here properly. Okay, good. And now what we're going to do is we're going to peel our release tape. We have our rough position. I'm going to peel it all the way across. And then I'm going to make sure I'm still matched up on this side. Looks like I need to shift my roller a little bit to the left. We're perfectly centered now. And I'm going to come back here. This is one of those jobs too where it's sometimes nice to have a helper, but we can do it. And I'm going to start to bring my fabric, and I'm going to match it right up to the line as I stick it and go. So I'm lined up over here, lined up. You don't want to stretch it, but you want to get it positioned right on the score mark. Good. Once we have it, smooth it down. Time to tightly roll up our shade. You can tell if you're square by looking at how your ends roll. You can see we've done a very nice job here. Okay. So we have it rolled, and now we want to install our drop rail. We're going to be doing a regular wind, so that means that our rail is going to go on like this. We need to keep that in mind. If we were doing a reverse wind, like so, then we would need to put the rail on this way. All right, your kit came with some plastic insert tape. We just need to make sure it's plenty long for what you're doing. Start at one end and line the tape up with the bottom of the shade. And then we want to get a staple fairly close to the outer edge, and we want to put our staple right in the center of the width of the tape, if possible. And then we are going to work along the bottom of the shade, and we'll come in and we'll put some in between here in a second. We're going to work along the bottom to get it lined up. That staple didn't go very well. I'll pull it and fix it later. And then we'll come in between and we'll put a few more staples in. Now cut the plastic tape at each end, flush. And next we will take our bottom rail and we'll fold this back so it forms sort of an L, like so. We're not going to fold it hard, we're not creasing it hard. We're just folding it back, and then we're fitting it into the hole right up here and into this slot. Once you get it started, just start to pull the material in as you pull the bottom rail along. As you can see, this is really a totally no-sew project. The next thing we need is that 3/4 inch strip we cut earlier. And what we're going to do is we're going to feed it in to the bottom rail. And we'll line it up so it matches our stripe pattern. And then we're going to cut the extra off roughly an inch or maybe a little bit more beyond the edges. Now next we install our end caps, and these end caps have already been painted. I'm going to hold it so my stripe match stays in position, and I'm going to fold that fabric into the cavity where the end cap goes. And then let's slide this off the edge of the table a little bit. And now my end cap goes in, and my end cap will hold the fabric for the bottom rail, and it will also, now if it's not super tight, which some fabrics aren't as thick as others, then it would be a good idea to fold this in part way and then to create another fold and push it under in order to create more thickness for the end cap. And that tightens it up quite a bit. So we're going to do the same thing on the opposite end here. And you can see we've set the rail up so that this is going to be a regular wind instead of a reverse wind, thus the decorative portion showing. Next, we need to figure out how long to cut the ball chain, and we want to take the height of the window, not the length of the fabric that we cut, but the height of the window, so the 45 1/4 in our case, so 45.25 times 1.6. That gives us 72.4. We're just going to call it 72.5 inches. That's how long we need to cut our ball chain. So next we need to take our clutch and we need to thread our ball chain through it. But before we do that, we need to think about where we want the clutch to be on our roller shade, and we need to think about whether the roller shade is a regular or a reverse wind. So we already know we're doing a regular wind. We know that we want the controls on the right-hand side because our left shade has them on the left-hand side. So we're actually going to be installing the clutch on this end, and we will want to then put our ball chain through the clutch mechanism from this top side, coming around this side, and we're going to have about a 5-inch extension coming out the back here. Now I'm going to throw you for a loop for a second here, and let's say that this was not going to be a regular, but this was going to be a reverse, like so, and ignore our bottom rail, because obviously our bottom rail would be flipped over if we were doing it this way. Now, I would want to still put the clutch on this side, but I would want to thread it from the bottom side up and around, and I'd want my tail to be coming out of the front here for about 5 inches. So, and that also, similar logic follows if you were to put it on the other side. So with our regular wind, we want to come in and we want to turn the gears, and you have to turn them down here, so that the double opening is right here on the corner that we're going to start inserting our bead. And we're going to go underneath this bar, and we're going to pull an inch or two over here to the side, and we're going to put the two balls into the double opening, and then we are going to start to spin the gear again, as you can see I'm doing here, until it's engaged. And now I can actually grab the cord and I can pull the cord and walk it around until I get to the point where now I need to feed my tail back under the bar. And again, I want, I don't know, 5 inches or so, 4 to 5 inches hanging out here. Okay, and this will meet or match what we said before for a regular wind shade when we install that. This would also be the time to thread your warning label onto your ball chain so that people understand that your roller shade cord can strangle you if you wrap it around your neck. Next, we connect our two loose ends of our ball chain with our ball chain connector. And this is a very simple process. One ball goes into one side, the other in the other, and then The first bend takes a little bit, but get it to bend. Once it starts to bend, it'll clamp over and lock down with finger pressure. And now you have a continuous loop.
Almost done. Next, we'll install the roller shade to our window.
We're doing an inside mount, and our window jambs are very nice for that. So we're just gonna push our bracket in here all the way to the back because the roller shade won't interfere with the window. And I'm just gonna make oval marks where the holes are. The pencil on the left side, do the same thing on the right side. Obviously, if you didn't have a surface to go up against, you'd want to use a level to get these nice and level, especially if you were doing them on an outside surface like this. So we will next drill pilot holes and install these with wood screws. Roll your shade entirely, and with it rolled all the way, take your clutch, and you want to see there are two fins in here, and you want to find the slot for the fins, and you want to line this up, and we're going to push it in hard at those slots. And you have to hit these a little bit in order to get them to go in. Have somebody help you if necessary. And that looks good. Okay. Now we want to come to the other end. There's the end plug. There are the fins again. Just take a couple of the slots and orient them however, and tap that in. Our shade is complete, and now we just need to install it in our window. This end, the plug end is spring loaded, as you can see, so that's the end you want to fit in first. And you push it in, apply pressure to the left, and then drop the legs into the cutouts on the right side and pull it down. Now when you're tight on a window like this, sometimes you have to put a screwdriver behind here and pry the bracket out a little bit for the legs to drop all the way into their notches. There it goes. We're locked in. At this point, you have a fully functional shade, and we only need to do a few things. We need to put our restrainer on for our ball chain cord, and we also need to put our stops on the line. So let's roll it back up and we'll prepare to do that. So we want to put our ball stops on next. So we want to roll it all the way to the height that we want it. Some people may not want it to roll all the way up ever, in which case you would lower it to where you want it before you put the ball stops on. But we want ours to roll pretty much all the way up. So I'm going to find that position, and then I'm going to hold the ball right here that is right at the bottom of this rail. So you can barely see it sticking out above my thumb. I'm going to hold that ball, pull this down, and then I'm going to take my ball stop, and 1, 2, 3 balls above it, I'm simply going to clamp the ball stop on, and this takes some finger pressure, but you just clip it in place. Now, when I rotate the shade all the way, it'll hit that stop, and that's the furthest the shade will go up. We want to do the same thing for the down position. So rotate our shade so that it's as down as far as we want it to go. And I want it to be very close to the ledge, so I'm going to go there. Grab this ball that is right at the bottom here, pull it down, and three balls above it, going to clip it in. And now, when I rotate all the way down, it'll hit there, stop, and I can't go down any further. Makes it just super easy to control these. And finally, our hold down clip needs to go in place. And before we do that though, sometimes there is a plastic pip that joins the two parts that would keep you from getting your ball chain through the opening. If that's the case, you can either undo your connector and slide it on or through the hole, or I just simply take a screwdriver and wedge it in here and twist it until it breaks that connection, which I just did there. Once that connection is broken, you can then pry this open, slide the ball chain in there, and you've got the hold down clip the way you need it. Now what we need to do is find a location on the window frame where we want to install this so that the chain is not super tight, but it's loose enough that I can still rotate it, and it rotates nicely through the hold down clip. So we're trying to keep this chain from being so loose that somebody can get their head in there. So make it as tight as you feel comfortable with, and then we want to drive some screws home through these openings in order to attach this to the wood frame. Beautiful.
As you can see, this is a totally no-sew project using the Roller Shade clutch kits sold at Sailrite. Simply order the Roller Shade clutch kit that accommodates your shade application, then pick from 100 or more of the gorgeous Roller Shade fabrics that Sailrite carries. Then, using common household tools, you can easily make and install high-quality roller shades in your home, office, or even outdoor application. Sailrite sells roller shade clutch kits in 3 width sizes, up to 48-inch, 60-inch, and 96-inch widths. When ordering roller shade fabric from Sailrite, buy enough yardage to equal the height of the shade plus about 13 inches. Some of the wider roller shade fabrics may accommodate more than one window. You may be able to get 2 or more up from a single run of fabric, saving you money. Order Roller Shade clutch kits and the Roller Shade fabric from Sailrite today.